Buenas tardes, vamos a comenzar, por favor.
Good afternoon. Let's kick off, please. Could you take your seats?
Muy bien. Vamos a comenzar.
Let's get started. We're going to start with petition number 13, presented by Ilya Antonovs, who's Latvian, on supposed discrimination and alleged violation of free movement of people in the Netherlands. Just to let you know, following 13, we're going to go back to number 12, because we didn't manage to get that in this morning. So we're going to go 13, 12, and then we'll go 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, which all relate to Denmark, and then we'll move on to 22, the Irish citizen, and 23 from a Spanish petitioner. So as I said previously, we'll be starting with 13. The petitioners are present, I hear. They're there, great. So let me give the floor to the petitioners. Ilya Antonovs, is that who it is?
The eldest son.
Okay, pues you have the floor, what you want.
All right. So I will read this as in the name of my mother. Can I? I'm a female citizen of Latvia, permanently living in the Netherlands. On March 23, 2012, the Dutch authorities have removed my two minor children, Nikolai Antonovs and Anastasia Haritonova, both born in 2003, also citizens of Latvia, from my custody. Among the reasons for removal named by authorities is that I speak only Russian. See appropriate slides, section Veiligheid Jeugdigen, which is irrelevant for execution of parental duties, and besides factually wrong, as I speak Dutch on conversational level and I also speak fluently Russian. Besides, the employees at the government facility where my children are kept forbid them to speak the native Russian with each other, as confirmed by an audio recording of my conversation with the children. Youth care organization, Jeugdzorg, employees clearly said during our meeting, in the presence of a lawyer and other invited persons, the representative of Embassy of Latvia in the Netherlands among them, that they don't like that Russian is spoken at home, and that is one of the two reasons that the children are taken away. Another reason is that the organization had suspicion that I would reside with my children in Latvia. The employees at the living facility where my children are being kept, forbidding them to speak the mother tongue, Russian, with each other. Because of that, children forgot a lot of words over the past 10 months and now have trouble speak and understand Russian. Jeugdzorg also denies any contact between the children and their older brother for already 10 months. The court's decision allowing Jeugdzorg to remove my son and daughter from my custody has expired on 8 November of 2012, which means that I could bring my children back home. I took back my children in the early morning on November 8th, but in 4 hours, the employees of Jeugdzorg, accompanied by the police, barged into my house, waving with the new court decision and claiming again removal of my children. And another trauma for them has been created. Jeugdzorg refuses to provide normal medical treatment to my children, which led to several illnesses in the past 7 months. And in particular, this year, my children needed a vaccination, but Jeugdzorg employees refused to do it. Conclusion, the above-mentioned activities of the Dutch authorities fall under competence of the European Union, as their discriminatory attitude impairs the rights of me and my children to move and reside in the Netherlands freely, granted by Articles 20, 21 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. By removing the children from my custody because of the language and by depriving the children of possibility to communicate in their native language, the Dutch authorities have violated the prohibition of direct discrimination by language and of indirect discrimination by ethnic origin and nationality, all forbidden by Article 10 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights. Besides, the authorities failed to follow their duty to respect the language diversity of the rights of the child and legal protection of family. Articles 22, 24 and 33 of the Charter. Ilya Antonovs.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. Prior to giving the floor to any colleagues who want to intervene, we'll hear from the Commission, and we have Mrs. Loop, who's going to speak for the Commission, I believe. Caroline Loop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I would like to stress that what I'll be saying won't be the final communication of the Commission, as the petition was received very recently. There was no time to consult different services. And also that we received only yesterday one annex to the petition. From hearing today the sound of the petitioner, I also discovered that a lot of annexes or evidence are lacking in the file. So that's what I'll be saying now is a provisional answer. So, well, you have heard the facts of the petitions. I will concentrate on EU law and general information on free movement and
Perdón, vamos a ver.
Sorry, what I can't understand as chair and member of this committee is that the petitioners are being brought all the way here, and then we're hearing that you don't have all the information and something else could have been done previously, because we could have postponed this, couldn't we? We could have not forced the petitioners to come all this way, and now we're hearing that we have to wait again for these documents and bring the petitioners here again. I mean, it doesn't, you know, you can't play with people like that. All you have to do is tell the Secretariat that the Commission isn't ready to give an answer. Please listen to what I'm saying. So, I mean, you could have got in touch with us to say, look, the European Commission doesn't have the response ready. We don't have enough information. Please send some more information in. Could we postpone this? I mean, you can't come here today and say, well, there's no information, so a provisional answer will be given here. You know, things can't work like that. It's not to you. I'm not. Don't take it personally, please. This is for the Commission in general. I mean, you can't work like that. You have to respect, well, the petitioners most of all.
I didn't mean any disrespect, but I received the information. We received the information on this Petition Committee last week. I required the annex were given to the Commission, and I received them only yesterday. So I worked also, of course, before receiving the annex. But no, I heard new facts from the petitioner, which were not in the petition. The fact that, for example, the children have been taken back in November 2012, and that there were court orders. There is no court order in the petition. So it's difficult to give a full answer, definite answer from the Commission today when there is new facts. That's, I'm just stating that it wasn't possible, and it's confirmed by new facts. But I go on. May I go on? Sorry. Okay.
Mire, vamos a... Espere un momento.
I've got a couple of requests for the floor. I'd like to hear from colleagues first, please. Have you asked for the floor as well?
Margaret, do you want the floor on this issue? Yes. So, I want to speak with you about this issue first to continue with this issue. A ver, Madam Berman, please.
Ja, danke schön, Herr Vorsitzender. Also, zunächst
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, to the Commission, I'd like to say that I can only support your words, Chairman. It's an absolute scandal. It's a complete lack of respect to the fate of these children and the fate of this mother. I think that while respecting your work, it should be possible in the course of a week, even though you only got this information yesterday, it should be possible to prepare for this. What do we do then? We also have to prepare for work. And if I understood this correctly, the children should have a right to speak their mother tongue. How can it happen that we have to accept that these circumstances occur? It's incomprehensible. If a child or a mother is not able to speak their mother tongue to one another, that cannot be valid under EU legislation. So, in any case, I am of the opinion that we have to keep the petition open simply to preserve the rights of the children, because they have a right to be able to speak to their mother in their mother tongue. And having two languages is a huge advantage. If children grow up with two languages, that's a huge asset to them later on in life. We're going to have numerous languages in Europe, and we have many children who speak 2 or 3 languages, and that's to the benefit of everyone in Europe. Thank you.
Gracias, señora Berman.
Thank you. Mrs. Zdanoka, please.
Yeah, just first on procedure. As you see, the petition has been submitted on July 10th, 2012, and with 4 annexes. In any case, the Commission had to have these annexes. 2 of these annexes were showed, and extracts of these annexes where it was written black on white that one of the reasons is that mother doesn't speak fluently Dutch and speaks Russian with her children. Yes, of course, from that time something has happened, but it is for further investigation. We are investigating petitions submitted on July 10th, 2012. Therefore, I cannot admit the response from the Commission that they could not be prepared for this hearing.
Madam Oken, please.
Sorry.
Mrs. Hall, please.
Jeg tror, jeg vil tale mit modersmål.
Sorry, I haven't had time to answer it yet, so of course you have received no answer.
No, perdón. Sí, perdón.
I have something to say. I wasn't just stepping there. So,
Sí, perdón. Sí, pero
like...
cuando le toque a usted.
Yeah, but take your turn, please. Wait for your turn. The colleagues first, and then I'll give you the floor. I'm the chairman here. I mean, if you're enjoying yourself, that's great. But I'm the chairman here, so please wait for your turn. Now, Mrs. Auken, please. Once again, I mean, if you think this is funny, then you can leave. Thank you.
Margaret, please.
Ja, jeg vil tale dansk, altså. Og blot sige, at selvom kommissionen ikke, hvad jeg heller ikke forstår, ikke har haft de dokumenter, det er lidt bizart. Men det er selvfølgelig ikke den herværende repræsentant.
Thank you very much. Of course, it is not the responsibility of the petitioner to look after the documentation, but nonetheless, I think that we can discuss it. I think that the Commission has used its imagination in finding an excuse for the behaviour of the Dutch authorities. It's incomprehensible. I think that the mother tongue, or the language spoken by the father, it could have been German or English, or even French. If a child is brought up with English, French or German, there would be no problem. Everybody would happily speak to one another. If everybody could have children with 2 languages, that would be wonderful. My brother is Dane, his wife is German, and their children have grown up with 2 languages. So I've experienced that in my own family, and it's a huge advantage for these children. And I think that we had a similar case involving Polish, and we all expressed the view that there had been discrimination against the father or the mother in that case. I can't remember. And I think that the Commission should call a spade and make things quite clear to the authorities concerned, but perhaps put in terms which make it quite clear to the authorities. But it's terrible that we have this sort of case again.
Thank you, Margaret. Please, you have the floor.
Just that I was reacting because you were reacting to an answer that I haven't given. I'm very sorry. So, yes. In general terms, Article 18 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union prohibits any discrimination on the ground of nationality. And Article 20 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union prohibits all kinds of discrimination, and among them, of course, discrimination based on languages. And these principles mean that EU citizens living in another member state should not be discriminated because of the language he or she is speaking. I would like to state that language policy may, from time to time, restrict, put some restriction to the possibility to use is one language. There is a case law of the Court of Justice, but it has to follow a legitimate objective, it has to be necessary, and it has to be proportionate to the aim, of course. So what I mentioned earlier, that the only annex we received was the one mentioned here, the decision, indicative decision of the youth administration. And, of course, you see in the risk factors, there are 6 risk factors listed in the decision. And the last one, I translate the whole risk factor. The mother is little integrated in the Dutch society. She has a limited network and speak only Russian. So that's what is contested. On the other side, when you read the whole decision, when you read the diagnostic in Dutch, there is no criteria, no factors, no taking into account at all the language or the nationality. The decision seems, at least from this annex, to be decided, well, to be based only on the family situation, on the crisis this family is submitted to. So on this annex, it's very difficult for the Commission to conclude that there is a final discrimination based on languages. I also mentioned that there are other facts. We didn't receive the audio evidence, for example, that the children are not allowed to speak together. So currently, the Commission cannot identify final discrimination based on languages.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Please. I've got something to say as well. I mean, it's very difficult to conclude for the Commission, of course. I mean, they're here saying that they haven't had enough time to look at the issue. Well, obviously they don't want to come to any conclusion, are they? I mean, what they should have said is, well, we haven't had time, give us some time and we'll see what we can come up with. Mrs. Zdanoka, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Turgais. I was involved in this case following to the letter I received as member elected in Latvia from Latvian fellow citizen Ilya Antonovs living permanently in Netherlands. And I have to stress that she is a Latvian citizen of the European Union, and as well as her eldest son, who is present here, and youngest children, girl and boy. Now they are 9 years old. And she wrote me a letter after they were taken off the family. And in March it will be 1 year. Yeah, and the video was also placed how the authorities were taking children. It's out of any perception of humanity how it was done. And I also Embassy of Latvia was involved in this case, but the authorities of Yugzork did not accept any competence of Embassy of Latvia. After a number of applications, they allowed representative of the consulate to be present in one of the meetings of MASA with Yugzork authorities. Finally, they accepted also my visit and my presence. I have personally also participated this autumn in one of such visits. By the way, and I have to approve, I have openly told to these officials that you are violating Charter of Fundamental Rights, because they were mentioning in paper, in words, all the time that the language of the family is Russian. By the way, the father with whom Yelena is divorced is also a native Russian speaker. But he later on received a status of refugee and then by facilitative procedure the citizenship of Netherlands. So I see here also unequal treatment of citizens of different EU member states, where one is a citizen of Netherlands and another is Latvian citizen. That is our petitioner. So I will not repeat all articles of the Charter, of the treaty, which are violated by my perception here. And I'm completely shocked by the position of Commission, which for half a year did not manage to provide us with a proper answer. While this is the time children are separated from their mother. They are neither have contacts with their father, in word of whom they were withdrawn from the family. So every day of child being a part of the family is influencing all his life. And it was a shock for children, as we can see from photos, from video, etc., etc. So every day we are not doing our job. It has an immense influence to the situation of the family, to the situation of the children. So my request is to keep this petition open and to obtain as soon as possible the answer from Dutch authorities and as well as competent opinion from the Commission. Thank you.
Vamos a ver, si les parece bien.
Okay. Please, could you listen to what I'm saying? Well, prior to giving the floor to the petitioner to conclude, what we'll do... Mr. Yar wants the floor. But we'll leave the petition open, obviously, given the situation. And we'll also do a couple of things. One, send a letter to the Dutch authorities raising this case that we've received in the Petitions Committee and calling for a solution to be provided by the Dutch authorities and a rectification as well. And secondly, given that this petition is open and as we heard we need more information, we could invite the petitioners and the Dutch authorities to appear in a future meeting. Do you agree with that? Good. Great. Mr. Yar, please, did you want the floor? And then I'll give the floor to the petitioners to close.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We have to try to sum this up according to the rules of procedure. I'd like to repeat two things. What I can't accept when the Commission says it doesn't have enough time for preparation. Our committee doesn't meet all that often, so there is plenty of preparatory time. They should just do overtime. Secondly, I understand the Commission when they say they couldn't prepare because they hadn't got the answers from the Member States, or the answers from the Member States were incomplete. Then I would support what the Chairman said and say that we should complain about this. We've really got to raise this with the Council. We have a general problem with the dialogue between the Commission and the Member States. That dialogue isn't working properly. And I know that if I were a Member State, I might do the same thing myself. If there's a matter which is unpleasant, then I'll try to put off an answer, because nothing will happen anyway. So that's not a good way to deal with one another. We should have some sort of deadline by which answers have to be received, and I would be explicitly in support of this being done. If we have an urgent need, we can leave the petition open, but when we come back to this, we need representatives from the Netherlands, because otherwise we'll be missing the point again. And we want to make this a key point, because otherwise we're just talking to one another without the Dutch authorities, and we can't clear things up. It's dissatisfactory for the petitioner that we can't make more progress. So that's an official request to the Chair to send a letter to say that we're generally dissatisfied with dialogue between the Commission and the Member States. It takes too long, particularly on difficult problems. It's all very well to cooperate, but we've got to deal with the difficult things as well. Thank you.
Victor, please.
Gracias, Presidente. I'm also sharing the same opinion as Mr. Yar just mentioned before. We are speaking now about something which happens within the European Union, which do touch fundamental rights of European citizens. Something which involves two EU member states. We are not speaking about something outside the European Union. And yet, to allow this to happen within the European Union, two children to be taken away from their parental shelter against any legal ground. How to do that? On which basis? Without having no court decision, just through an administrative act. Then how to qualify the behavior of an EU member state versus EU citizens? We are speaking here again about EU citizens, not about any others, because there are also events which do involve outside EU citizens. Even in that moment, it's not acceptable. And finally, to have now the answer, but we had no time enough to explore the response and the reply of the competent authorities, it is just the failure of our claims about human standards, about fundamental freedoms, fundamental rights. Because the statement is very nice, but the difference between preaching and practicing is sometimes huge. And this is a crystal clear case where two children, we speak no other language except the family one, are taken away from an authority with no other except administrative decision, treated in a way we don't know yet, while the information we got from Madam Zdanoka shows there are also problematic issues related to the behavior of those authorities, and ask the European Union to say with full serenity, sorry, we had no time, we have no information. Member states which pretend sometimes to give lessons to other member states. I don't hesitate to say myself that Netherlands is sometimes practicing and preaching standards for my member state, Romania. How to accept that? How to accept that in 2013? This is why I'm completely unhappy and concerned about the reply of the Commission, and it's just unacceptable, the reply from the Dutch competent authorities. If this happens with EU citizens, it's easy to imagine how it can happen with non-EU citizens. Sorry.
Gracias, Víctor.
Thank you, Victor. The petitioners have the floor to wind up very briefly.
To finish about this question,
Gerne.
very shortly, please.
Ja, ja, ganz kurz.
Very briefly, I'll speak German. My mother tongue is Czech, and I grew up in the Netherlands. But I've lost my mother tongue. And that's a comparison with this case. I'd like to point out that the Dutch authorities have already undertaken legal proceedings, but in the legal proceedings, the judge was told that the children had to be removed from the home because at home they were speaking Russian. And the judge decided on that basis to remove the children from the home, and the children were taken out of the house next day. And 3 weeks later, there was a new legal ruling. The mother made all sorts of accusations, or rather put all sorts of points to the judge about why the children shouldn't be removed, but the judge didn't take account of that and just took account of what the youth centre had said, and said that what they said was right, and that was the end of the matter. And so this is how the whole problem was dealt with in the Netherlands. And this is how the judges work on child cases. They don't take account of the truth or the reality, but the kind of things put forward by the youth office. And I think that they've got a very nice job, because it was only 2 days ago that the Dutch authorities asked for agreement to look at the documents pertaining to the mother and the children. And that's just an indication of what the whole situation is like, and it's been going on and on. One mistake after the other has been made, and the children are the ones who are suffering. The mother is suffering, and nobody's looking after them. And so that's why the mother came to ask for help.
Muchísimas gracias a los peticionarios.
Thank you very much to the petitioners. So if there are no further requests for the floor, we will do what we said earlier on. And on the 18th of February 2013, we sent a letter which said,
I have to inform you that it has not been possible to comply with the request of the committee in time for the handling of this petition by the committee scheduled for Wednesday, 20 February 2013. Como ven, pues estamos más de lo...
So as you see, it's more of the same. And
in your letter of December, sí, me lo dice para que remarquemos que lo traduzco en su carta del 3 de diciembre.
It's a letter of the 13th of December. It was sent to the Dutch embassy on the 13th of December. So they've had enough time to be able to reply and to provide us with more information on this. So we'll come back to this subject, I hope, with all the information available to the Commission And on behalf of all my colleagues in the Petitions Committee, I do apologise because this shouldn't have happened, what you saw today with this petition. So do